Hi everybody, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and I have a geometry tutorial to share with you today. We are working with 12 division of a circle. For this project I have my Lyra color pencils. I do have some Stockmar watercolors for later on in this project. I am working on some drawing paper to begin with. This measures 9 inches by 12 inches. I'm going to be using my compass to draw a circle, and I'm setting the radius to 4 inches because I really want to fill this page with my circle. So I'm going to estimate the center of the page and then swing my circle around, making sure that my center is well positioned. And if you can't see your center, go ahead and mark it. Then take your compass and put it on the circumference and then swing arcs on either side. You want to be as precise as possible for this part of the project. Then you're going to place your compass on that arc and then swing it again on either side. And then once again, you're going to place your point on that arc and continue swinging until you have done your 6th division of a circle. 6th division of a circle is one of the easiest divisions of a circle to do because your radius is the same distance between each of those points. So now we need to do 12 division of a circle, and this is going to be a little bit more complicated because my page is a little bit small now that I have consumed it entirely with my circles. So I'm taking a piece of paper and I'm going to place it on the outside of the circle. I'm going to put my compass on 2 of the points. So I'm going to start with 1 point and swing an arc on the outside of the circle, place it next to the original point, swing another arc. And where those arcs cross, I'm going to connect it to the center of the circle, and I'm just going to mark on my circumference. So now we have bisected those 2 points on the circumference, and we're going to take our compass, again keeping it set to our original radius, and we're going to swing arcs all the way around the circle because it will be perfectly bisecting each of those 2 original points along the circle. And this way we will have our 12 division of a circle. And I am swinging my compass back and forth to make sure that I am accurate with each of those points, because if you're even a little bit off, you will be able to tell. It will grow in discrepancy as you get into your design. At first, it won't be as noticeable and it seems like a minor discrepancy, but it will grow as you get into your design. So now it's time to choose what kind of design we're going to do. And for this, I'm going to number each of these points 1 through 12. It's going to be a little bit easier to keep track. Now, I have video tutorials on skipping 1, skipping 2, skipping 3, and you can see how each of these designs are going to be unique. For this one, I am going to skip 2. So I've gone from 1 to 4, 4 to 7, 7 to 10, and back from 10 to 1. And you can see we've inscribed a perfect square into our circle. So now we're going to go make sure that all of those points have a square. So I've just shifted the square over by 1, and we still have room to inscribe 1 more square. So we can see that now we have 3 squares, and each square has 4 points, and we have 12 points along the outside of our circle. Now we're going to make this same design on the inside. And the mistake that I've made here is that wherever those 2 lines cross, I am using that as the point rather than making sure that we stay accurate with our points. And this is going to be hard to tell at first, but you're going to be able to see that these squares actually turn into rectangles because they haven't been perfectly shaped. I'm going to color this in at this point, and it still looks pretty good. The whole design looks pretty good, but as we go even deeper into this design, very quickly it's not going to be holding its shape very well. So I'm using a variety of greens, and I really want to do more of an ombre, but that didn't work out quite as well. And here I'm connecting the next set of 3 squares on the inside. And already you can see that some of those parallel lines are not parallel in a good way, that there are parts that are closer together and parts that are farther apart, which means that as I color in these triangles, they're not very balanced. Some are very tiny and some are large, and those squares have turned into rectangles. So we're actually going to do it again. This time it's on watercolor paper. And the way to rectify this is to go from point to point. So now I'm going to connect opposing points, and I'm going to draw a line right through the center of the circle. And I don't need it to go all the way to the point because I want to erase those lines anyway, but this is going to be my guide on where to construct the next set of squares that are going to come into the center of the circle. So here you can see that a couple of them line up, but in some cases they don't line up, and that might only be a millimeter or two, but that is enough to throw off your entire design. So this way, by drawing the lines from point to point, crossing through the center, this gives us an appropriate guide now so that as we draw our squares, and they're getting smaller, at least our squares are staying squares. Even if they don't perfectly line up with the previous set, they will always be a square, and that's what we want. So that as we get smaller, we're not distorting our shape, which means that when you do it this way, you can actually get really, really tiny. What's curious, however, is that as you get smaller, the distance between each set of squares is going to be less. So your very first set of squares are going to have the largest peaks, and as you get smaller, the peaks are going to get smaller. So you'll be able to see more clearly as we color in this design how those little peaks are going to get really tiny as you get to the center of the circle. And then at some point, we're just going to stop. So I have maybe 6 or 7 or 8 concentric squares down to the center, and it looks amazing, but I want to erase all of my extra markings and all of the numbers which I marked all the way down to the center so that I wouldn't get confused as I am drawing my squares. And that was a really big tip, especially when you're working with children. I found that when I was working with my 14-year-old daughter, that was a really good tip to help her. Otherwise, she started to get confused on where to draw her squares. So I've got my Stockmar watercolors as well as some white opaque paint, and I'm actually going to mix all of the colors that I want to do with a little bit of opaque paint. This set of watercolor paints is already opaque, semi-opaque, but I've added some white to make it even more opaque, which I actually really don't like. I would have preferred to keep it just those watercolors, or even better, the set of watercolors by Stockmar that you mix with water that come concentrated. I think even those would have turned out a little bit better. So I'm doing somewhat of a rainbow order all the way down to the center, and between each 2 sets, I am mixing the colors to give an ombre between the green and the blue so that there's a bit of a green blue, and then same between the blue and the plum, so there's a little bit of a light violet all the way to the center. And then I decide to add some shadowing, and I think I'm just going to add shadowing on the lower half to make it look like the light source is coming from the top, but that didn't work so well, so then I shadowed the entire thing and I added a little bit of low lights with the black, and I think it looks great in the end. However, I did it one more time with just the opaque watercolors, not mixed with white, and I changed the color orientation to make it look like it's kind of swirling into the center. I really like the way this one turned out, and here are all 3 different samples for the same 12 division of a circle using concentric squares coming into the center. I hope that you enjoyed this geometry lesson. Don't forget to check out the blog post that accompanies this video for more geometry tutorials as well as resources. You can find the link to that blog post in the description box below. And if you'd like to see what we're doing for geometry on a daily basis, you can find me on Instagram and now on TikTok at Pepper and Pine.